Thank you for joining. We are going to start shortly. We are just waiting for the others to join in. Please stay on the call. We'll start shortly. Welcome everyone to the Ipsos Insights Roundtable, where we gather the finest thinkers in the business to discuss and debate on topics which are pivotal to our insights business. Today we have a treat for you. Let me just talk you through what we have as contents for today's roundtable discussion. Let's start then. Namrata, if you can move on to the next slide. So today, like I said, we have a treat for you. We have gathered three supremely accomplished, delightfully articulate women to discuss the changing needs of the woman consumer. But before we get on to the discussion, and we also have our culture expert Radhika, who will be a part of the panel. And I know this is what everybody is waiting for, but we also want to share with you uh, a sort of an internal report that we worked on, and it's called Being Woman, and it's about the cultural perspective of femininity, empowerment in the context of India. So I want to start off with that. So I'll hand you over to Namrata. Namrata was the lead researcher on this project, and she'll walk you through some of the great insights that we had when we worked on this presentation. So over to you, Namrata.
Thank you, Geeta, for the short introduction. Let me know if you can hear me, and then I can get started.
Right.
Am I
Please go
audible?
ahead. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking out time for this session today. So, Being Woman seeks to understand what it means to be a woman and explores gender through a cultural lens. The report is a product of curation using Ipsos assets as well as some external sources. So, while the main report is quite extensive, I will be taking you through some of the key highlights in today's session. So let us see what it means when we talk about the cultural roots for gender in India. So we see that it has always been sanctioned power. Yeah. So even mythology and history talk about women, who are operating behind the scenes, like in the political power. Even, religious power are endowed by Trinity. In short, India is very much masculine in its visual display, of success and power, resulting which there has always been underlying tensions due to conformity and internalization of gender roles. So that brings us to the key thing here, the key finding, the key insight here, that having equal access, for example, education and occupation, does not necessarily mean having, freedom, which also means that it does not allow women to be their own true self. So, what is freedom? And how is it different from equality, you may ask? Okay, let me tell you. Equality would mean adaptation to already established code of conduct. It reinforces patriarchal narratives. There is a constant competition or nudge to behave like a man or to take on some masculine kind of characteristics. Yeah, for instance, becoming more aggressive in a way, chasing perfection, which ultimately could be quite stressful for the woman. On the other hand, freedom is more about unwilling to bargain for anything, such as kind of delaying marriage or childbirth, because a woman kind of fears that she will miss out on certain opportunities in her life. That is ultimately loss of freedom for her. Yeah. And one more example. Like, we have seen, we were talking to various women when we were conducting this research. Even working women tend to take permission to purchase something for themselves or spending money for their side of family, sometimes even hide. And they try to avoid any sort of judgments or speculations coming from the family. Yeah, we even see that there are many instances of being forced to have a joint account with a male counterpart. So, if we look at these three pillars of, what they feel, they have, and do, equality talks only to the middle pillar. Yeah, but it should be more about, it should be talking to more about, what makes them feel empowered or to be able to do what they actually want to do. So, cutting to Indian scenario. So, while women have a lot of legal rights in India and policies are very much in place, I'm sure many of you must be knowing that as well. But most of it looks very good in papers. Yeah. But overall, there is freedom in selective areas only. So, leading to loss of confidence in women. For example, Constitution of India reserves one third of all the seats in parliament for women. However, in real, we see that the representation is how much? Only 12%. Yeah. So we have the best maternity leave policy, but then businesses might withhold recruitment of female employees because of the risk of pregnancy. Therefore, giving more access to women probably is not the solution in India. Work needs to be done in areas which makes them feel much more confident about themselves, optimistic about the future, and have freedom to follow their own dreams. Yeah. So basically, how can we really enable them to have more freedom? So let us have a look. Yeah, there are many ways to support women, which is like beyond communication, we can say, such as promoting digital fluency and design interface. Yeah, in fact, there's a lot happening in these two, see, pillars like digital fluency and design interface that we can really look at. So let me move forward. And, when we started off this journey on being women peace, we had three countries, US, France, and China. We looked at various historical milestones, regulations, how women are depicted in the culture, the communication, what are the inherent tensions for them, what are the things that they are talking about, what are the big controversies happening when it comes to culture, what is creating anxiety in the society overall, and the pattern that we saw is what explains similarities and differences, basis which we have come up with these four dimensions that we have listed down here. I would say since we have done this study across 10 countries by now, including India, so this holds pretty much true and strong across. Yeah, this was arrived at so that we can assess how to go beyond stereotype and talk about issues which are relevant to a specific country culture because it might vary from one culture to the next. Yeah. So, how do we define gender identity? Is it more about male versus female, or non binary spectrum of gender identities are coexisting? In terms of aspirations, do women compete and win against men or are more free to express their own female identities? And what about the support system for women? From where does she derive the strength that she has? Is it more about the systematic mandate or the like-mindedness support through the sisterhood prevails? And talking about relationships, is it more perfecting to established social norms or is it she really trying to find her own way? Okay, so let us try and see how it is in Indian context. While we are more binary, the new generation is gradually moving towards fluid sort of identity. An abolition of article 377 has brought in some changes. We are increasingly seeing new roles in Bollywood. For example, Chandigarh Kare Ashiki, some of you might have heard about this movie or have watched it even. It portrayed an actress in trans woman character. When it comes to aspiration, we often look for work as the main context to depict progress and development. In recent times, it is also about sports, right? But then all tend to be quite competitive in nature. There is a rise of sisterhood as a means of support, but there is a difference between sisterhood and traditional women group. I'll come to that in a bit. Role definition shift is happening but tends to be more like a gender swap. For example, a lot of communications talk about or show women against male or making them do all kitchen ka kaam or ghar ka kaam, so as to say. So we are noticing a new trend, sisterhood, like I was talking a while back, which is more like a universal trend that we see, but could have different intensity and meaning in different cultures, which is women standing up for each other. Primarily, the empathy that women bring for each other together, lifting each other up and sharing experience. Take this for example, like, kind of taking solo trips through all women travel clubs. Have you heard of it? Yeah, so it exists. And traveling with like-minded women who are completely strangers to them. And in a way, they feel safe to travel with them and kind of share a similar kind of rapport. Yeah. They do not fret to reach out to women and take suggestions from those who have faced similar kind of situations. So there are many apps or for women, or even on social media, there are some groups which are like, focused around talking about the problems of women. They can reach out to each other. They can talk about similar situation that they have faced, so on and so forth. So these are not the traditional sources, right? So I would say this might give us ideas on what to think about things like testimonial, real endorsement, etc. And it need not be stereotypical. So to end, there are many things that could be done. Yeah. So, and like I said in the beginning of the report, this is quite an exhaustive report. And in fact, we generally cascade it down through a 90 to a 120-minute kind of a workshop to share, more insights. So I would say please reach out to us in case, you want to know more about it or you want to apply it for your brand. So thank you so much for your attention. Geeta, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Namrata. The quintessential dilemma of being a modern woman, like they say, to run with the hare and hunt with hounds. Um, so, moving on, coming to the panel discussion today, I would like to first introduce you to our wonderful, eminent panel here. Namrata, if you can move on. So, today we have Sunita Wangad, the Group Head, Consumer Insights and Brand Development from the Central Strategic Group of Aditya Birla Group. Anurita, who's the CMO, India Subcontinent, Haleon. Vandana Pai, who's the Head of Insights and Analytics from Johnson& and Johnson. And Radhika, like I said before, she's a cultural expert. She's the global head of strategic curation, and she's based in Singapore. And moderating this discussion today is Ashwini Sirsikar, who heads both qualitative insights as well as social insights and analytics practice for India. So, without much ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ashwini for what will be a riveting discussion, I'm sure. Over to you, Ashwini.
Thanks, Geeta, and thanks, Namrata. And a warm welcome to our panelists today. So, like Geeta said, without much ado, let's move on to the questions that we have set out for you. I'm sure the discussion is going to be very lively and very engaging. So, looking forward to it. The first question that I have for you is that, how would you define progress for women and the Indian, modern woman? How do you think she has progressed and advanced in the last few years? And Vandana, do you want to take this question?
Sure. Thanks for that, Ashwini. So I think progress, there's some work, which we recently did also. So I can speak from that. Uh,
Okay.
m- uh, Progress for women is not about that one big move, right? And I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised to see it. It's about a little bit of movement every day, right? So, a little thing which is more than what I had earlier, a little more freedom than yesterday. Things like, for example, having the freedom to just kind of step out in the evenings where I wasn't being allowed to do it earlier is also something which she sees as a sign of progress. And for me, when I say progress, it's something which makes her feel positively about the whole thing, right? So I think that's how I would define it.
Can
Okay.
I
So,
add
yeah,
to
sure, Sunita, go ahead. Yeah.
I think, and just like I think everyone is trying to unravel and unwrap women as an important cohort as far as their business is concerned. And we have quite a few businesses where we talk to women. So
Hmm.
we too did a little bit of a study on women and trying to understand them as women, as
Okay.
consumers, and as promoters. Because in a lot of our businesses, whether it's fashion or investment, we also see women now becoming promoters or influencers in that category.
Yeah.
And I think we had four concepts or four ideas of progress as they put it out. One was uh, just breaking stereotypes. There is
Okay.
this whole thing about a woman has to be A, B, C, D, E, and the whole idea of breaking that stereotype itself is progress to begin with.
Yeah.
So that was, being a certain way, talking a certain thing, doing a certain profession. If that's not what you really box them into, then that's progress. The other thing is when they said they feel they are moving in the right direction on progress is when they have a freedom of choice. They have a control and a freedom of choice to decide what they want to do, how they want to do. Doesn't necessarily everything lead to a career, but it's about whatever they are doing. Even if they're a housewife, can they decide their agenda and can they control that agenda as far as they're concerned? So it's in that sense. The third is when they're really allowed to dream and imagine what their life script could be. So that's really moving into a slightly more edgier way of progress where they're saying that, can someone not write my script? Can I do it myself? Can I decide what I want to be in life, whether it's a doctor or it is an RJ or whatever or a housewife? Can I really write my own script? And finally, it is when they can have the choice or the freedom to explore and express themselves. So these were right, four or five levers of progress that they came about. And it's like she said, it's not one size fits all for different people. It's different ideas of progress, but it's about can I expand from where I am?
Yeah.
Can I upskill and do more? Can I have a mastery of what I'm doing? So if I'm even cooking, can I now feel that I'm more like a chef and not just like a home cook?
Home
So
cook.
can
Yeah.
I get mastery? Can I get the sense of importance that I'm not doing a job because I'm supposed to doing it. People are
Yeah.
grateful about what, I'm doing, and it's actually adding to people's lives. So that's also
Sure.
progress for them.
Hmm.
And the ability to express themselves. I think a lot of women in India just feel stifled that they have a lot of ideas but are not allowed to express themselves. So when they are
Yeah.
into that zone of, being able to express themselves, then I think that's progress. So I really go with what Vandana is saying, but it's a multi-dimensional definition of progress, unlike
Yeah.
males, which have a very stereotypical, I
Yeah.
think, line of progress. So
So
that's, I
very
thought I'll just add that.
interesting to, notice. I mean, you're talking about this multifaceted, and I think that word freedom came up quite even when Vandana was talking about it, or you were talking about it. So there seems to be an intrinsic link between freedom and progress. Is that something that we are saying? Anurita, would you want to comment on that?
Well, actually,
I think the word that I was tossing in my head when
Yeah.
both Vandana and Sunita were talking, was freedom. It
Okay.
is just about degrees of freedom. So if you just, take your lens right from the top of the pyramid to the bottom of the pyramid, and which, by the way,
Yeah.
now is no longer a pyramid because it's more a diamond-shaped model,
Yeah.
because there's so much, upward movement, and that's great for the Indian economy. And, obviously, that's what's panning out for the golden age of this particular country. It is to do with that feeling of freedom, and it starts with a feeling.
Okay.
Yeah. And whether that feeling of freedom is, as someone said, literally saying that I can be a little or entirely of who I aspire to be,
Okay.
whether it is stepping out of the kitchen, whether it is actually then becoming an online YouTuber and posting your recipes,
Yeah.
whether it is actually just reading up on what's happening around the world, around the country, just having that freedom of expression, uh, to be who you are, no matter what your daira is. That
Okay.
daira could be different for a woman living in a village. That
Yeah.
daira could be very different for people like you and me.
Mm.
And for us, that daira would be probably being a global citizen
Mm.
and being in this panel and talking about what we feel and doing research about more women in this country.
Yeah.
So our daira will differ, our circle of reference will differ, but freedom, whatever that word means, to
Yeah.
whichever part of the diamond that you are belonging to, is
Mm.
what is changing. And obviously, it is related to progression.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, because all of it leads in some way or the other. If it is expression, it is about making a choice. It is
Mm.
about
Mm.
having a say. It is about being part of the decision making for whatever the family decision is.
Yeah.
It could be buying apparel, it could be buying something for the household, it could be education of your children, it could be you choosing to do something to add to the family
Yeah.
livelihood.
Yeah. Yeah.
But financial independence and emotional freedom are the keys, and that we see definitely the needle moving towards the right. The degree will differ.
Okay. So, that's an interesting point that you made, Anurita. So, is there an intrinsic link between financial independence and emotional freedom? Do you see a connect? Because, I mean, is that almost like a hygiene which needs to be there, that only if I have financial freedom can I aspire for emotional freedom, or they're not connected?
Yes and no. Yes
Okay.
and no.
Mm.
So I would not say that the women who continue to be homemakers, yeah,
Okay. Mm.
yeah, either by choice or the families that they have gotten married into are not becoming more progressive. They are in
Okay.
their own ways, which is why I'm having
Okay.
a very, very, what do I say, a fluid lens to it.
Fluid lens. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, financial independence is a big part of the story,
Yeah.
and that gives a very different level of confidence because suddenly you're able to make your decisions. It is about taking a decision, it is about having a voice on the table.
Yeah.
It is about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, that helps, and that gives a very different inner confidence because it is about inner confidence. It starts from
Yes.
within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you take one step, you would probably reach out for to buy something today. You're happily clicking and saying, yeah, sure, this is what I want for me. So that
Yeah.
dimension changes because you know what, I'm contributing to the table, so I deserve it. So that dimension is changing.
Yeah.
But for the ones who are choosing or are in families which are still relatively a little more traditional, or they have chosen to be homemakers for various reasons, family reasons, extended family reasons, whatever reasons, for them as well, the ecosystem itself is
Hmm.
enabling this. So you will have women who are talking about, I'm ordering this from Blinkit. I don't think I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
go to the neighborhood kirana every second,
Hmm. Hmm.
hour. I'd rather just do this. That independence has come possibly
Yeah.
from the internet penetration and that enablement that, listen, I don't have to depend on somebody else all the time for every single thing. That
Sure.
entire degree of dependence, for
Yeah.
which, yeah, sure, they could be homemakers,
But
Y-
again, I say, are they able to take some decisions on their own?
Decisions on
Which
their
where
own.
yeah, where I'm
Absolutely.
talking of people below the
Yeah,
pyramid, because I don't want to make it all about financial independence. That would be then ignoring
absolutely.
a
Yeah,
large
yeah.
part of the population.
Sunita, you raised your hand. You want to add something? Yeah,
No, so
comment on
I was
this.
just saying that I agree with her. I think it's a journey from being dependent to being
Hmm.
self-dependent to being independent.
Okay,
You know,
that's a very
because I think
interesting journey. Yeah.
people are
Hmm.
on that journey,
Yeah.
and that's where the whole thing of what she rightly said is, it doesn't mean that you need to be financial independent to be emotional independent. Today, if you have a voice in the house, like she rightly
Hmm.
said, I'm deciding where I want to order from. I don't want to go
Yeah.
and get something. I don't want to ask someone to do this. I'm just dependent on myself to being able to handle my own things. That
Sure.
itself is the first degree of people feeling emotionally gratified that they could express themselves in whichever way that they wanted.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, the ultimate goal is to become independent. And independence, I don't know, being independent is not about just earning money. Being independent is
Absolutely.
about being able to decide how you want to lead your life.
Yeah.
And that daira that Anurita spoke about, we being able to make that daira also for ourselves.
Hmm.
Why should
Hmm.
someone else decide that
Has
daira?
to.
That itself to
Absolutely.
me is freedom and independence. And for a large section of our population in India, and I did travel quite extensively for it, people
Hmm.
across ages, I just see that they're already feeling differently for the next generation. And that's
Yeah.
already a sign of progress and a sign of freedom that, they're willing to give their daughters a chance. There are, of course, certain
Absolutely.
sections which are still needing to come to the table on that front, but I can see the gradual shift that's happening and which is already a positive move.
Yeah.
So
So
just
I
wanted to
see
add to
few
what she said.
questions from the audience. So one request to the audience, if you could put your questions in the chat box, that would help, and we would move to the audience questions at the end of this discussion. Vandana, yes, you wanted to add something?
Yes. So, one of the things is, and adding on to what Sunita and Anrita just talked about, financial is not everything. In fact, something which I read recently, very staggering statistics, a lot more women have dropped out of the workforce in the last 15 years, right? In India. So, in around 2005, we had about 32% people, women being employed, and today the
Okay.
number is about 19%, right? Quite staggering.
Hmm.
One part is, of course, to do with the fact that more women are now studying. That's the good news. But a part of it is also because of the fact that, okay, I might be financially independent, but I need to also do other things, right? So my home responsibilities, everything that I was supposed to take care of at home, all those things continue to be
Still continue.
expectations from
Yeah.
me, right? So
Hmm.
how do
Hmm.
I take care of it? And that brings me back to to the same place. I'm in fact more stressed out because while I might be financially independent, but there is also this expectation which is coming in
Yeah.
from me. How do I
So
handle
it's an
this, right?
additional, it's responsibility which is there.
Exactly.
Radhika, I
Yeah,
wanted to
so
come to
women are
you,
shown,
because
Ashwini, women are
yeah,
expected to do more, but never less. That's the point. That,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
it just keeps adding on to whatever you want to do your own thing, but you have to take care of this. It's never, nothing is taken out from her
Yeah,
realm
you can't
of
give
her
up
duty. So
any
that's
of your
exactly,
responsibilities, they just get
that's true.
added. Yeah.
That's
So
true.
Radhika, given that you've understood this freedom discourse, one is of course in India, but also the Western world, whether it's US or France. Do you see any commonalities in what freedom means to women across the world?
Uh, the need for freedom is universal, but
Yeah.
what it means is very, very culturally shaped and influenced.
Okay.
So, for example, in US, which is the bastion of personal liberty and individualism, women that the same individuality comes to how women fight for their own rights. So
Hmm.
ironically, they in when you compare, they are some of the least free because they have to sometimes do two jobs. They don't have medical insurance. Even simple things like like a working woman in Asia would have support of childcare facilities.
Yeah.
There's a helper or there's an extended family. So they are battling issues on many fronts, and so the need there for freedom is something that they have to carve out themselves. But if you see
Hmm.
China, for example, is a very, very interesting culture where they're saying it's not so much freedom to as it is freedom from. So you keep me free from assaults, this, that, give me access to money, affluence, give me a seat at the table. I'm pretty okay to ensure that maybe I will never be the topmost person in the hierarchy. There are still certain ways in which properties and businesses are handed out, the legal heirs and things, but they're okay with that because having the freedom from certain things is making them feel far more empowered. So in fact, on the confidence index, China is the highest in the world. And then
Okay.
you see countries like South Africa, for example, even basic safety is important. And therefore, you see the women from the lower part of the pyramid or diamond or whatever are actually banding together to see how they can help each other to be safe and, continue with very high single mothers and things like that. And in India, it's very interesting. It is like, I love the word Anurita used of daira. It's like, who is setting this daira? For now it is definitely patriarchy, and so there is
Hmm.
this whole concept of allowing you to be a little bit more free, but be free for good things. Don't be free for things which I don't approve, and I think that's
Yeah.
that's the cultural nuances I'm saying. I'm very happy to
So,
hear all this conversation
yeah.
on freedom.
So, were there any surprises for you, Radhika, when you looked at the India data? I remember you mentioning that, in a way, the woman is a lot more advanced in certain fields as
Yes.
compared even to the, Western world. So,
Yeah.
anything that you want to
So
talk about in that context?
if I'm not mistaken, India is number 3 or 4 in the world in terms of the kind of rules that are there on paper
Yeah.
and things that are allowed and how they're protected. Then you have seen a lot of new things coming in the corporate world, like the whole gender. I don't know. You need to have a ombudsman kind of a role, right, in each of this, so there's no discrimination. There's a lot of that, I think, and of late, women have also started coming together on their own in the sisterhood drive, which is
Yeah.
so I was, in fact, when I compared, I was surprised how advanced India was. And one of my, we have that whole gender identity dimension, which is how fluid or binary you are. In all the markets, I always give the example of an ad which was in 2017 or 18, which featured a real life transgender mom. And that is a fantastic example of
Yeah.
combining gender identity and the roles that you take. Are they traditional or unconventional? She was everything that a mom is, but she happened to be a transgender person. So
Hmm.
I think India is far ahead. The fact that it's a democracy and there's a lot of discussions happening, even the counter trends are an indication of how women are getting stronger. So I would say
Yeah.
India is
So
fairly
one,
advanced. Yeah.
yeah. So one is this, interesting VIX example that you spoke about. Are there any other, I mean, obviously popular culture, movies and ads have a big role to play in our lives. So can you tell me a little bit about how do you think, advertising and the way women are portrayed in advertising or in movies, how has that changed in the last few years? Anybody can, like take this. Yeah, Sunita, go ahead.
I think a lot of what we see in ads and movies, it's a dual thing. It represents what's happening in the world, and at the same time, that's where you get inspiration and you want to
Absolutely.
change.
Yeah.
And much has changed and much has remained the same, I feel.
Okay.
So the changes are very far and few in between, where you have a share the load that kind of showed a role reversal of sorts, or at least the beginnings of the realization of the changing. I don't know whether it will happen or not, but I think that whatever I've understood of that case study, they've done very well for themselves. It's continued over the years, so it's clearly being accepted very well. There was another ad where I think it was Vim, my friend, where you're actually talking of role reversals in the kitchen. Why should the women wash the vessels, etc., and the guy says I can do that job
That's,
very well.
yeah,
So there
yeah.
are a few of these examples which shine out intermittently. But if I look at the large landscape of advertising today, I don't see too much really changing. I mean,
Okay.
I'll give you some examples. You may say that, okay, the paradigm of beauty has shifted. So you're not like that fair and, very
Mm-hmm.
chiseled out. You might have dusky skin, but you still want the person to look very pretty, which is very weird. Why would, so you have a Dove, which talks about real beauty, but then you have many, many ads that are actually talking of the perfect beauty, whether it's the body or the face, etc. Just the color may not be fair anymore
Yeah,
because we want to
yeah.
kind of bring in diversity. So flawlessness is still expected. Like I was saying, women, most of the durables show that because you have an oven or because you have a washing machine, you can spend more time with the family, you can do more things. So it's you never reduce anything from your home. You just try to, and new stereotypes are now coming, showing women as super women. Many of these MTR ads, etc., where it is she has 10 hands. And so you're now creating even more burden because people saying, oh my God, that chick could do it. For that matter, there are the serials. When I was talking to women, everyone took this name of Anupama. And I then actually watched a
Yeah.
couple of episodes to say, what is this thing that everyone's going on?
Mm.
She's like this perfect. She can do anything, everything, solve everyone's problem. So new stereotypes are also coming into the picture.
Okay.
It's also about, sometimes they also show that who's giving you the permission to be something. So father is now saying that, okay, if you want to marry my daughter, you should be doing this. So because I have given my daughter this kind, so there was an ad about something and sons ki jagah something and daughters. It's like a very patriarchal way of saying we are kind of endorsing this
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
concept coming through ads. um
So
Also the
why is
fact
it
that
that, more brands are not actually pushing these boundaries? What do we think is, I mean, you spoke about a few examples, but you're also saying that largely we are still in that, not really pushing the envelope so much. We're just sticking to possibly, some conventions and nudging it a
why
little bit. So why is it
so
that,
my
brands are not taking a lead
I think,
when it
a lot
comes
of
to
brands
this?
want to be closer to where life is. And, we also find solace in misery. So a lot of people then kind of, why are all our soaps always about Sasbu dramas or, because that's what people say
Hmm.
this is reality. And therefore and when somebody wins in that reality, they have a hope and aspiration that their life will change as well.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of people don't want to rock the boat because they're not accepted. Those ads then become too much of a feminist, or when you're trying to break too many stereotypes, and then people kind
yeah.
of shun those ads. So I think there's a very tight rope that even advertisers want to walk. But I would urge all of us on the panel today, and that we should, whether it's incremental and don't go breaking and pushing and tearing the envelope on everything, but we need to nudge that to move in the right direction, because I think we're creating more problems for ourselves rather than liberating
Yeah.
ourselves from where we are. So that's what I would want to say.
Okay. Vandana, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is also not being done, possibly because we want to capture everything in a very idealistic way, right? Everything is perfect, everything is right, everything is escape moments, right? Rather than it being closer to your reality. I think that's the other part. It's not about, trying to show where is it that the evolution needs to go to, or what is it that we face. It is all about showing,
Hmm.
oh, this is the perfect world, right? And this is how I
Yeah.
dream of being.
Okay.
And
So
I think to some
a
extent, even
little far away
enablers
from
have,
reality, we're saying, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
enablers have to start much earlier. I think this whole concept of the way we bring up our own daughters, to ghar pe your paradhan, you need to get married and go somewhere. I think that conditioning is also something that we have to change. Women have to also look
Hmm.
at themselves very differently, because um unless that changes fundamentally, you upskill yourself, you learn more, you try doing things. If there's a barrier, find a way of, overcoming it, rather than expecting some escapist or some brand to come and do that for you, because they'll do
Yeah.
it on screen, but in life you have to do it yourself. So what is it that you need to do is also something that
Hmm.
women should look at. And I think when that changes and they stop endorsing some of the stuff that they see on TV,
Yeah.
even brands will then obviously have to move the needle. They cannot be doing what they're
Sure.
doing anymore. But I think that's some of the ideas that I could think of.
Anurita, you want to add something?
I'm going to have a slightly different point of view.
Okay.
So first and foremost is, I think a lot is changing.
Hmm.
Yeah. And 2 points. The first one is that, look, when brands have a point of view, yeah, everyone wants to, it's good to look back from a distance and say, what's the
Yeah.
next bunny out of the hat? Doesn't work that way. You have to have certain right to say something before you say something. Yeah. Or you
Okay.
have to have your strategy very, very clear as to how do you want to steer your ship. So I'm just going to give you, for example, work at Helion, which is
Yeah.
GSK Consumer. Every single part of our campaign structure, every single brand, be it Iorex, be it Sensodyne, be it Centrum, be it to a certain extent Otriven, uh, we are showcasing women.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not, in some brands it is because we clearly do believe that the woman is the influencer, is the decision maker, is there for the primary TG, which happens to be what we are doing with Centrum, which is the vitamin supplement space. But that's because we believe in it. Yeah, but in the case of Sensodyne, it's irrelevant. It could be a
Yeah.
guy or a girl. It just so happens that we seem to, because we talk to real consumers, we
Hmm.
happen to get women who are real, authentic. There is a certain code of how we communicate Sensodyne. They
Okay.
are the one who authentically have emoted the best. So that's how it's turned out. Cut to IRX, where we have traditionally, for example, shown a woman in the kitchen and then sharing the load, but moving to an IPS officer because we are talking about winning over your pain every single day for a larger dream and a larger purpose. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel these are just cases in point, and it's close to what we are doing, which is why I thought I'll just spend some time on it. It takes clarity of strategy.
Hmm.
Two, it takes conviction. Three, it takes really then how do you steer the ship? Because really, advertising and marketing is not about being flashy. It is not
Hmm.
about doing the next fashionable thing. It is not about saying that, oh, because this is the trend, let me do something about it. We are here to deliver business. If it makes sense, and it takes effort. So of course people are trying to, there were quite a few examples of Unilever and Procter. So look at the large frame of being. There
Yeah.
are advertisers, there is the world of marketing, but it's clearly, moving. The conversation has changed. You can see that, and that's how you see the fabric changing. Do you
Yeah.
see the content of movies changing? We are talking about women getting pregnant in their mid 40s and saying it's okay. We are talking about people in live-in relationships, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And we show hinterland, by the way. So if this does not reflect the fabric of change, then what does? But I'm just reminding people that it is about hard grounded business and hard grounded, what are you wanting to do? It's not about saying, yeah, sure, let's show a woman, etc. You need to be clear
Hmm.
about your strategy. That needs to sit in your strategy, and that needs to deliver business and brand growth. If that be so, then we are talking, and then it takes courage, and then you're talking about a brand that resonates with the TG that you wanted to resonate with it, and then you're delivering growth.
Yeah.
So you're clearly, so it needs
So
to be looked at, I think, a
interesting,
little
yeah,
holistically.
different perspectives which are coming out when it comes to, this topic. Wanted to touch upon one more thing which Namrata also spoke about, and I think Radhika also mentioned, which is this whole concept of sisterhood that we are seeing in India, right? I mean, you are seeing a lot of women are not only reaching out to their immediate family and friends for support, but it could be a stranger. They're going on solo trips with other women. There are lots of these groups which are mushrooming on Facebook and all that, where you actually seek advice, support, counseling from other women who are in a similar situation as you. How do do you see this concept of sisterhood being relevant for your brands or the way you're communicating, around your brands? Is this something which is relevant?
I'll start with that one because I think I see it hugely in play when it comes to motherhood and adopting motherhood, right? So embracing motherhood. A
Yeah.
lot, and if we look at, for example, how it operates in India, one of the biggest thing which helps in driving, clarity for mothers is when they hear it from other mothers, right? Or because they understand those things the best. So,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of these communities, for example. So, we
Okay.
make sure that we participate in those communities, because through that, then disseminating the information and making sure that consumers are able to kind of figure out an answer to their questions becomes easiest. Also, it
Hmm.
becomes more credible for them because they know that these people are going through exactly the same problems
Similar.
as
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah.
And if they are
Hmm.
suggesting this, then it makes a lot more sense than a brand coming and talking to me about it, right? So I
Okay.
think a lot of it, when it comes to certain things, there's a lot of it happening. There are spaces, for example, if I was to take another example where we are, but it does not happen as much, is menstruation, right?
Yeah.
While again, one would expect that to be a space where sisterhood can come into place, but at this point of time, conversations are much more limited. So,
Yeah.
while it's feasible on one front, on the other one, we don't see it really coming through.
Okay, interesting to see this. On motherhood, there is so much of conversation, but on menstruation, perhaps, it's still not there. What about Sunita, Anurita, in your
I think
context for your brands? Yeah.
I don't know about, I mean, I obviously have a larger portfolio in terms
Yeah.
of, stuff that happens. But if I was to look at the concept of sisterhood, I think it
Hmm.
exists.
Okay.
Because, if you look at the entire, I mean, today you go to Instagram and, earlier people would only follow, I mean, they still follow film stars and their idols as far as that's concerned. But there is a huge influencer economy that's going on, a huge
Yeah.
YouTuber economy that's going on, whether it's recipes, whether it's ways of doing makeup, whether it's styling, whether it's even investment for that matter. And I think what happens is when people see similar profile people doing that, there is, like
Hmm.
she was saying, there's far more conviction, there's far more belief, and there is a
Yeah.
thing of if they can, I can. So, in a manner of speak, it kind of moves the agenda for people as well, because it's not like somebody had everything and then is saying something and therefore I'll believe. But there is this person who's very much like me. And I know there's so many women out there where they have huge followers when it comes to home remedies, home recipes. So sisterhood as a concept for women is amazing because they just feel that it's their emotional place where they can go, they can deal with it, they can talk to people, and women tend to kind of nurture women in that fashion. So I
Absolutely.
think as a
Yeah.
concept, it's fertile ground for us to take it forward for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Anurita, what about you? Your brands,
No,
especially
totally.
for
I guess
Centrum, is that, yeah,
all of it.
all
And
of it. Okay.
I think it goes back to what we started talking of in the beginning of this conversation, which is freedom. And to do with as working women population increases, and that working woman could really be even a domestic help. Yeah. The point is she's stepping out of her home to go earn a living. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or she's sitting at home and earning a living. She could be stitching, she could be doing various others, but basically
Yeah.
the enterprise nature of a woman is getting more fuel as we go forward. Now, as that happens, if you had, and I'm just kind of taking a number, if you had 12 hours on your plate, you now have, say, 8 hours
Yeah.
on your plate because 4 hours go into whatever that you are doing. Yeah, minimum. Yeah, it could obviously be more, etc. How do you then develop an ecosystem of support? It is
Yeah.
coming from actually there. That's the insight. Because when you step out and you fill your plate with other things, you need other things, other people to take part of your load, to help you
Yeah.
make decisions faster. Who would you reach out to? You would reach out to people you trust. Earlier,
Yeah.
it could be people in your family or people in your neighborhood or some
Mm-hmm.
close friends. Suddenly, you also have a smartphone in your hands and you have access and you have lesser time because you've chosen to be something else. What would you do? You would actually reach out to people you trust, people like you. You don't need to know them, but you need to have a view to make your own decision. What would you do? You would go to communities.
Yeah.
So, of course, you will find people like yourself. You would find women like yourself. You would, therefore, know that, yeah, there is this whole sisterhood going on. And I will kind of get an opinion from people like me at a largish level. If I post something, I know I'll get an answer, and
Yeah.
I can then kind of trust because that answer is coming completely unbiased and
Yeah.
uninvested. And from our brand's perspective, also to your point, of course, health and well being is so primary
Yeah.
to all of us. And that's percolating really as far as you can go. Again, the definition will differ, what they do about it will differ. But if somebody is so invested in health and well being, she will want to know. And she will talk to influencers. She will listen to influencers. She
Sure.
will
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
people like herself. It is about that.
Yeah. Yeah, Sunita. Yeah. You
I
raised
just
your
wanted to
hand.
also say that, sometimes because women don't get a voice in their own environment, and they feel that at least they can express themselves, whether anonymously or otherwise, onto the social media, get a perspective. Sometimes it's also about just being heard, which is very,
Yeah.
very important. I mean, of course, the response is great if you get from the other side because it builds your confidence, it helps you to go along and get your life. But I just feel that social media and digital has also given a voice to people where at least now they don't feel it's all within themselves. So the sisterhood of reaching out, whether to like-minded women or to the world at large. But the fact of the matter is that, somewhere they get a chance to express themselves, to be able to say what they feel. And
Yeah.
when they get responses like Anurita said in return, it just builds either their conviction, confidence, or their ability to
Confidence.
move forward. So I think from that
Absolutely.
perspective, sisterhood as a concept is prevalent and should be used even more for
Okay.
women's progress and growth.
Okay. So I wanted to end this, panel discussion with one last question, which could be a little controversial, which is, does having a gender specific celebration like Women's Day or having special privileges for women actually detract from the cause for a certain segment of the society? And is there a better way to do this?
So Ashwini,
Especially because we just,
my point of view on this, we discussed it.
yes,
On
that's
one
why I
hand, we're
brought it up.
talking
Yeah.
of equality, and then we want to celebrate. I think every day is Women's Day. Every day that she lives, every day she does whatever she does is Women's Day. And personally, when women decide to move out there, I mean, Anurita spoke about domestic help, and we were talking of numbers coming down the workforce. I don't think we look at that large workforce, which is also working women. We just consider ourselves to be working women. They
Yeah.
don't sit and ask for equality, and they don't sit and ask for, they just do their job, they do it better, they move ahead. Today their life is different from what it was maybe 5 years ago. They have their own associations, etc., etc. But my point is, if we've chosen this field and we want to move in this field ahead, then it's about coming here and having to perform. I do appreciate that women have at times certain physiological concerns that need to be taken care of by organizations so that we don't drop off and we kind of move ahead. But as women, somewhere I think we're all leaders. And when we come to our offices, we should bring our professional outlook more than, oh, we are women, therefore. We are
Yeah.
leaders, we happen to be women. And that's the outlook that we need to come for. Let's not engage in negotiation of benefits, or that could well be for a man as well. I mean, why are we assuming that he doesn't have the same baggages at home? In some cases would be more or less or whatever. Having said that, because that's where we ourselves put ourselves into a corner. So I
Okay.
do appreciate that we need support, sisterhood, we need facilities, because yes, we have issues at home, we bear children, there is a physiological need, there needs to be mentoring, guiding, coaching, all of that for us to be able to deal with our pressures. But it's not about we can't ask for equality and privileges at the same time. Somehow, it, at least to me, I know I may not sound in the popular majority, but I definitely believe that as women, we need to think of ourselves as professional leaders first, who
Yeah.
happen to be women and who do a swell job at doing what they're doing. So that's
Yeah.
my perspective.
Vandana,
I have a
Anurita,
slightly
one
different
closing
one.
comment. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think while I agree with Sunita that, this is the case for all of us around here, but I think also for a large majority, a vast majority, they operate from a very different place. They have not had most of the privileges we have, right? So I believe that there is so much setting back for them that if some of these things are not done at a policy level, or if there isn't as much noise being made as is happening today, it will take a lot more time to bridge the gap. So I personally believe that, and it is like for some of the other, we can talk about in India, support has been provided to certain communities, right? So that
Yeah.
over a period of time, they can come at par with the rest, right or wrong. But I feel that, these are some of the policies which help in making sure that the gap is being bridged.
Okay.
So in my head, this is something which is required, possibly not for people like us, but and it needs to be, does it need to be at a more on the ground level?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But definitely needs to be something which there is support on.
Okay. I can see
These I'm
Geeta
not against. The
frantically
policies,
signaling
no,
me
sorry,
to
Ashwini.
move. Yeah, yeah, go.
I
Yes,
think
Geeta's here
policies is a good
with
idea. I'm
audience
just talking of
questions.
privileges that we ask for. That's where I was coming from. But I do agree that you need to have certain frameworks and certain policies and maybe some soft quotas to at least get people into it. But once they come there, that's where I was having a perspective. Just wanted to correct myself on that.
So I would have
So,
loved to go on and ask you some more questions, but I think the audience has put lots of questions on the in the chat box, and Geeta wants to take some of them up
yeah,
right now.
just take
Yeah.
a few because I also didn't want to butt into this riveting discussion. So I'm just going to pick a few which are interesting to me. So sorry if your question doesn't get picked. So Sakina asked a question about addressing gender equality and ensuring that men are not feeling isolated, marginalized, or emasculated. So that's almost like a kind of a standard question or a dare posed at femininity, feminism. Does anybody want to take that up? So, how do you address gender equality without marginalizing men?
That's exactly what I was just saying, that when you are in your work area, I mean, then rules of the game are the same, whether it's for men or for women. Certain, how should I say, certain back end privileges in terms of saying taking care of your kids or your insurance or things like that, which actually help you perform, should definitely be available. But after that, I think it's about really the best person wins. It could be a man or a woman doing the job, doing it well, and moving the agenda for themselves and for the organization. So at least that's where my stance is. So that, but I'm sure there could be differences of opinion on that one.
Okay, let me ask you another, the panel, another question. There is this reference, Shrutika is asking, women are referred to as a better half. So, what dimensions of better half can one explore when communicating to women consumers? So, this notion of better half, can you leverage that? How can you leverage it in a balanced sort of way? Uh, Anybody, go ahead. Anuta, Vandana, Sunita, Radhika, go ahead.
Okay, so I think the answer lies somewhere in what both Sunita and Vandana have said, which is let's not go about overbeating our own drum. It's really okay. Stop wearing a crown on your head. I'm a superwoman. It's okay. Relax, breathe. Yeah, one. Two, have confidence in who you are. Constantly, if you have to keep reminding everybody, I'm a woman, I made it, really, it's okay. Yeah. Having said that, it's also recognizing the larger ecosystem where women really come from, and that's also real. That's also real when they are really, battling a lot of traditional mindsets in their own families, a lot of expectations. You have to do this and that. That's also real, and it's ignoring it would also be silly because then you're not facing reality. So the truth lies somewhere in the middle of it, and really beyond a point, I feel let's not get lost in semantics. Better half, worse half. Who cares? Please, you're a person. You happen to be of the female gender. Bring your best to the table, whatever your table is, and that's all it is.
Wonderful. There's a interesting comment by Supriya here. She says it's interesting to see how many men made time to listen to this, and there are quite a few men. A lot of them we know, brilliant, intelligent men, obviously, who are listening into this wonderful discussion. I'll just accommodate one last question, and I'm just like randomly picking this up. Uh, There's one where Maitrey is asking a question here. Sometimes in communication, you see a kind of a trend of putting down men in order to show women are equal. So what's your view on this? To show women are equal, do you need to put down men?
Not at all. Not at all. I think if you want your cause to move ahead, why should you put down anybody else? It's just like when you do your brand, you talk about how good you are, not that somebody is bad. And putting down someone doesn't make you any better because that person is not your yardstick for sure. So you go about doing your own thing. I mean, it's not a fight or saying I'm better than men, because then in your mind you've already put a benchmark saying that's all that you have to achieve. There's nothing more in life. Your benchmark, and I go back to what Anurita said, तुम्हारा दायरा क्या है? That daira is not focused on men. When we are over focusing on men to prove ourselves, I think somewhere we in our own mind don't think of ourselves as equal, because then we already know that that is the ceiling that I have to break. Boss, the ceiling is much wider. You can choose to be better without putting them down, just to do great jobs at yourself. And why focus on men? I think sometimes we over focus on men to get the cause of women ahead. They're doing their job, we do our own thing, and I don't think that should be a benchmark at all.
It's a perfect kind of a summary of the sentiment that we heard, Sunita, today from everybody on the call. I'm going to hand it back to Ashwini. I see a lot of hands. I don't think we'll ever be able to settle this discussion or sort of quell everybody's curiosity in 1 hour. It's a brilliant topic. So I'm just going to hand it over to Ashwini and uh,
Yeah,
to sort of
we've
close this
already
discussion.
overshot our time, so I'm just going to be brief and thank everyone. I mean, it was really, like Geeta said, a riveting and extremely engaging discussion. I think everybody, I mean, I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too. And I'm sure the attendees also had a good time basis the number of questions that they've actually put forward. So thanks. This was like wonderful to have you on the panel, and we look forward to engaging again with you soon.
Thank you for having
Thank
Thank
you
us.
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you
was
Thank
a
so
great
much.
fun.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
And before
Bye.
we go, I just
We have
want
one,
to
yeah.
remind everyone that in case you want to reach out and know more about the Being Woman report, please reach out to the two people whom you saw on the call, Ashwini and Namrata. Will put their mail IDs in the chat. And thank you all, the wonderful audience, for being on this call. And to paraphrase the great Taylor Swift, dash the patriarchy and let's move onwards. Thank you and bye bye.